Started.
I can't start before,
I know.
so they'll pop in. See, there are two people.
Oh, there she is, Michelle.
Remote. All right, it's 5 o'clock and there's Michelle. So we will start with a roll call, bringing the regular meeting on a special topic
Yes.
for May. Michelle, you want to lead off?
Sure, Michelle Fitzpatrick, secretary.
Bray Rafferty, Vice Chair.
Ann Schmidt, member.
Larry Dunn, chair.
Kristen Distante, member.
Tom Olson, member.
And Dave Prescott, staff. Sorry.
All right, we really have one topic on the agenda, and so I will turn it over to Michelle to coordinate the college confab, I guess.
Well, I know they have the link and I know they're gathered with
1,
Jen,
2,
so.
3, 4, 5. There's 5 on there.
Oh, okay, I don't see
Five
them.
students and Jennifer.
And Jenna, or
Okay,
4 students.
well, the students are presenting the results of their projects for the semester from their service learning course. So do you want to put them all into panelists?
Well, do you want to do that, or do you want to do them one at a time? Oh, Jennifer's there. I'll allow her to talk. Hold on.
Yeah, put Jen in for sure, because then she can help to resolve that issue.
Hi, I have the speaker order if you're interested.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
So first you can promote, the first presentation will be the Earth Day group. And Caitlin Rodeo will be the presenter.
Okay.
The second group will be the Energy Solar group. So Ollie can be the speaker.
Okay.
When you promote. And the third group will be the trees, urban forestry. And that'll be Kaylin. The fourth group will be stewardship. And it'll be on Kendall's laptop. In the last group, the POCD, you can promote Charlotte.
I think one of them is missing. Helen, not on there.
Yeah, Jennifer, one of them. Oh, there she is.
No,
she is now.
Okay, she just popped up. Yeah.
Oh, there
she Okay. And Charlotte. All right.
Okay, so I guess start with Kaylin,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Caitlin, yep.
Caitlin, yes.
So yeah, what I'll do is I'll promote you as panelists in that order as we go through. So you'll see it as it pops up.
Recording in progress.
Hey, Earth Day.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Look at that great
Whoa.
team.
Yeah.
So you have the floor.
Yep, so we're working on just sharing the screen.
That's looking good.
Can you guys see that okay?
It's still
It-
loading.
It's loading, yes.
Let us know.
You need the IT department.
Yeah, no kidding.
Is it-
Wow.
It's still loading. Yep.
Is this a slow lane? Or it's a big presentation?
Or a slow program.
our screen sharing is
Didn't test it before they
just
did.
off the other side. Just-
There we
There,
go.
it's starting to come up. Oh,
It's
No,
getting
no.
there.
I lied. There it
Yay,
is.
you
Nice.
got it.
Kind of, sort of.
Well, yeah, it's going to start, at least it was there. So now it's just go to slideshow mode.
Just do it. Yeah. Just.
There it is again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, at least maybe just leave it in that mode and
Okay.
scroll through.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so our project was working on planning the second annual Groton Earth Day Fair. I'm Sam. I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Gabby.
Okay, so our overall mission with this project was to be able to bring together certain communities in a celebration of Earth Day through education, local business involvement, and community engagement, and to provide a space for the local community to share their climate anxieties. So for our original proposal, we had 3 tables. So our first was a climate anxiety booth, but with a Charlie Brown style psychiatric help booth where you have a jar and you put a nickel in and start a conversation about climate anxieties. We revised that a little bit to a more general climate anxiety table. And we were always planning on having a good veneering scholar service learning project presentation, which we kept. And originally our third table was going to be a kid-focused recycling education game, but another organization was already doing this. So we revised to a more to asking children their understanding and like their depictions of climate change.
So after our first meeting with Jason and Kristen, which was super helpful, we were able to kind of adjust and see what the needs were for the fair. And so first table that we kept was the good veneering one, like Caitlin mentioned before. And then we also added Ashlyn, who's from the school's pre-college program. And so she was also there to share a little bit about what Con has to offer. And then we had our climate anxiety table with the Zen booth, the surveys and the drawings. And then the last thing that we kind of proposed was the social media promotion for the fair. And so we split that up in kind of like week and a half kind of things. And so Caitlin took the first half, Sam took the second, and I took the last third.
So that was one of our main deliverables, was the social media. It was a lot more time consuming than we were anticipating. There was a big Excel sheet including all the vendors, and we tried to mention each one individually, giving them an Instagram and Facebook post and posting some of their own pictures and their logo, as well as like a mission statement. Yeah. So we designed 2 surveys. One was specifically for adults and the other were for children. The kids weren't as interested in the surveys as they were drawing what climate change looked like to them, but we did obtain a strong number of surveys from the adults. And the primary questions we asked were, what were your biggest worries about climate change? Where do you see climate change in your daily life and at home? And we also asked for some background information, such as where are you from? What is your occupation, for some context to these answers.
So yeah, the climate anxiety table that we had was really just a space to kind of provide people with the space to kind of just share their grievances and like talk about what they were worried about. We had a section for the kids, and that was really like cool to see them all draw what they thought climate anxiety was. Sometimes we had to explain it to them in a kid-friendly way, and then we put them all up so that, you know, everyone else could see what other people thought and know that it's like a shared concern of everyone who's there. And then we also had the surveys, and that was just a good way to kind of hear what people had to say. And at the same time that people were filling out the surveys, we often had conversations with them. So that was really nice to just be able to talk to these people and see how they were feeling about it.
So we put together some of the main survey results from the written surveys. So the general question was just what worries you most about climate change? And we noticed a lot of trends in what people were responding to. So one thing that a lot of people brought up was the effect of climate change on their children. So I pulled a couple of quotes from the written surveys. I'm anxious about having a safe planet for my children to live on. I worry for my daughter and people her age and younger, and I worry for the fate of my grandchildren. Another common theme was shortfalls at the government level, feeling like the government isn't taking enough initiative and accountability for environmental action. Some people say, it makes me lose faith in our government since our leaders are not doing anything about climate change. We live under corporate rule, not a democracy. Another individual said, I am concerned by the communication issue we have with climate change. We have the science to prove it's happening. We have plenty of solutions, but we don't have the full support on enacting these solutions in our governments and businesses.
And then there were a lot of people who felt helpless and afraid. A few of the quotes that we pulled were, I can't do enough to make a difference on my own, the effect it has on animals ecosystem. I'm afraid most will be gone. Fires are rampant and terrifying. I worry that we can't do enough soon enough to prevent our own extinction.
And finally, a lot of people mentioned climate change hindering their ability to go about their daily life. So people mentioned things like our street floods regularly, making it impossible to leave our home. And climate change is always on my mind. There's also one quote that we pulled that was just, we thought really summarized the surveys nicely. Oh, it's gone. Okay, never mind. It's great. Next slide. These were some of the many drawings that we received from kids. And as they drew these, we posted them on our booth as shown before. And I think this inspired other kids to join in. This was definitely a hit at the fair.
So I think our biggest partnership, and it was really something that we had a lot of fun being part of, was the Zen booth and the WSHU partnership. So Jason introduced us to JD Allen, and we were able to work with him and his entire team to create this space where people could share while, you know, in a private space and like not feel, I don't know, like they had eyes on them. So we also found a artist volunteer who made this cool poster to put in front of the booth. And it was just a space where they could share how they were feeling. It was equipped with a microphone, and they're gonna probably use the little recordings in future like podcasts and segments, which is really nice to have your voice be heard by so many people. And then there were also actively at the same time other interviews going on with team members from the WSHU team.
So there was a very long file of recordings from the Zen booth throughout the day that we listened through. And, you know, one kind of example of things that people might say was, my concern is that people don't acknowledge the grief and then it gets stuck inside and we just walk around like robots. It's important to act from the sadness. So there were a lot of really interesting responses. I think people felt very free to share a lot of emotional issues that they had about climate change while they were in that booth, which was a really awesome experience to like provide that space for. So this was our service learning table where our fellow Goodwin Year sophomore scholars presented their work. So some groups provided a trifold poster for their presentation, others provided an interactive display as shown by Ollie and Gabby in that photo, and they all shared their work.
So some challenges that we had, the day of, it was a little rainy, and so we were a little concerned that people wouldn't show up, but we honestly had a great turnout. And I think the emphasis on like be there, rain or shine, was really good to like get people going. And then we kept posting on our story, just kind of showing people that like, you know, people were showing up, there were so many tables, and there was a lot of activities to be done inside. And so that ended up being a great turnout. In terms of vendors, we had an active like spreadsheet with everyone that was going to be participating. And so I think a challenge that we kind of encountered was we'd contact someone or we'd reach out and either we wouldn't get a response or they wouldn't be participating anymore, or we'd get new vendors. And so we wanted to make sure to highlight them in our Instagram and Facebook posts. And so just keeping that organized. And then we originally had a table that was going to be like the kids table with the recycling game, but then there was some miscommunication and another group was also doing that. So just being able to coordinate with other volunteers to make sure that, you know, we weren't doing anything repeated.
And some skills gained along many from this experience, one of which is project management. Another is social media operations, navigating partnerships with external companies, general communication. There was a lot of, you know, emailing, Zoom meetings, and meeting new people throughout this project, and also just being super adaptive to things like the weather or changes in vendor participation, and just overall being very equipped to handle change. Thank you all so much for all of your individual help, Michelle, Kristen, and Jason, for all the email exchanges, helping us navigate the planning and execution of this fair, and to all the GNCE scholars for having extra buddies at the fair, making it really fun. to hear more about all your work. And thank you, Jen, not just for the fair, but every class. And thank you to our survey participants for all of the information we were able to obtain from that, and to all the local vendors for sharing their sustainable practices and informing us more on what environmental awareness and sustainability looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Wonderful.
So can I start with the questions since I can't easily connect with you guys? Can you put back up the challenges slide or at least, because I have a question about what you meant by one of the challenges, because I want to make sure that we don't lose that information. So you have limit responsibilities. Can you explain what your issue is with that?
That was just a future recommendation that we had, not so much a challenge, but more for groups in the future. We were thinking about kind of what happened with our original idea with the kids table, the kids recycling game. It was we bit off a little more than we could chew in our original proposal, and it was nice to narrow down and really put our effort into a few like concrete deliverables, and having 2 main tables and the Zen booth, I thought enhanced the project versus having a lot of things that you're juggling at once with only, 2 or 3 people or however many are in the project in the years to come. So that was just a future recommendation. And the second one is just having a set meeting time with fellow volunteers and with your project contacts would also help kind of with the amount of like juggling that has to go on with a project like this.
Okay, but you did feel that you were able to narrow it down enough that you were able to put the effort into each of the things you did choose appropriately, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, that's part of the process, so that's good. So that's actually an important part of the process, is figuring out when you kind of made your scope too big to really do it justice, right? So that's good, thank you.
Very good. Any questions from Bob?
Just for our own information, was this WSHU, did you guys line them to come, or did they volunteer to come and you just coordinated with them?
We're not really sure. Jason's the one who kind of
Jason.
connected both of us, and I'm not sure if Jason had reached out, or if JD Allen had reached out to Jason, but we're just really glad that we could make it happen.
I could speak to that. Jason hounded them for months.
Oh.
Months to track them down, to get them involved. And I thought I thought you guys did an amazing job. And I think that was universally appreciated, like what an excellent job you guys did, and mostly what I saw, of course, was the social media, because on the day of the fair, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But you did we're really, really pleased with how you did. And we really hope that, if you're around next year, you'll kind of get that group launched on the social media too. Because I think that the hardest part with that social media is just making those first 2 or 3 posts. And once you get it going, then you're like, okay. But yeah, you guys killed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to Ollie. Thanks, ladies. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's
There you
weird not seeing what you're doing with the Zoom.
There he is.
There he
Hello.
is. Hi, Ollie and Annie. No, not
Uh,
Annie.
All right, can everybody,
Reese, that's right.
Yes, we
Reese.
can.
can you guys see the presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess we get started. All right, you wanna go ahead?
Hi, welcome to our presentation about how we explored the life cycle of photovoltaic solar modules. I'm Reese.
And I'm Ollie. We'll get started. All right, so our goal was to explore the consequences of waste in the growing PV solar, photovoltaic solar industry. while looking into how solar energy economically and environmentally benefits Conn's campus. So to start off with some research, we wanted to find out what photovoltaic solar panels even were. And first of all, they're the most common kind of solar panel currently, and they're silicon-based, which is their main semiconductor. And in 2017, they reached an estimated power of 222 gigawatts globally, which was projected to grow to 4,500 gigawatts in 2050. And this is great news in terms of direct carbon dioxide emissions, because electricity from fossil fuels accounts for CO2 emissions between 400 and 1,000 equivalent grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, while there's a negligible amount from silicon-based solar panels. All that being said, there are consequences to the growing industry. And one of these is the expected global waste from PV modules in 2050 is expected to be between 60 and 78 megatons. And in the graph to the right, we can see that this waste comes from regular loss, which is assuming around a 30-year lifespan, but also early loss. And some of these reasons for early loss are transport damage, weather damage, installation issues, electronic issues, and many other problems that can occur. And one issue with this is that PV panels contain several very dangerous chemicals that when they seep into the ground, they can ruin the nearby environment. And because there's all this waste, I was curious on the recycling process, what happens to all these decommissioned modules? And it turns out this is really complex and confusing. And the graph on the right, the top two horizontal charts show two existing commercial recycling processes. And the bottom three show three proposed recycling processes. And the first one is refurbishing modules that are in pretty good condition and just reusing them as lower quality products. The second one, which starts to get more complicated, is extracting components. So recyclers may not be able to use the entire solar panel, but they can use the components. And then the third one, which is even more confusing and complicated, is the material extraction. So they can't use the solar panel itself, they can't use the components, so they just extract the different materials that the solar panel is made out of and then try and reuse that for other either solar panels or other projects. Now, flipping over to more of a corporate side of things, I had an informational interview with Brianna Amoroso, who is a manager and consultant at a company called 3 Degrees Group, Inc. And she gave me some background info about the Paris Agreement from 2015, which supported efforts to keep the global average temperature below 2 degrees Celsius. And at her company, 3 Degrees, they got hired by other companies and corporations to get contracts for renewable energy certificates, which are also called RECs. And one REC is equal to 1 megawatt hour of renewable energy. And so I was curious when deciding what source of energy to buy these contracts with, how do they choose between, say, solar and wind? And a lot of it depends on location, like the weather and location and geography, but also depends on the developers that are working with the companies. So this could cause the costs, the legitimacy of the developers, such as company reputation, and the development of the projects. And those all play a factor in deciding. And she brought up an important question that I hadn't thought of before, but how do we weigh future issues, such as the consequences of the waste of the solar panels with the current crisis of high carbon excretion?
So on to what we learned about solar energy at Connecticut College. So the focus was mainly on a solar array put on top of the service building in South Campus. It was established in 2020 with the help of a Maine-based company called Green Sun that was founded and owned by a ConCall alum. So we were doing this with the help of an outside company. So the annual power missing animal power produced. So the upfront cost for setting up the whole thing was $62,254. The annual payback was $12,000 and $4, meaning that we were able to make up the difference in 5.64 years. So about next year, after next year, we're gonna be breaking even. And it's important to note that a lot of the labor was done by students and faculty. So that wasn't really taking labor costs into account that it would if we had just entirely outsourced to the company. According to a professional simulation of the array, the annual energy production will be 72.7 megawatt hours, meeting about 2/3 of the building's energy needs. There in CO2 emissions saved, we saved 51.4 tons. And the equivalent to having planted trees would be 2,361 trees. So yeah, it's pretty effective in terms of, conserving CO2. And so about the future of solar at Connecticut College, the images weren't working. The future could be a bit more complicated. For example, we have a lot of historic buildings on campus that date back from like the beginning of the college in 1918. So the older structures such as like the Blackstone plant and Branford houses, which were all built like during World War I, would require a lot more renovation in order to be able to support a solar array. And that sort of translates well to like the greater Groton area. Like Groton is home to a lot of historic districts and buildings where it would either be impractical or just not possible to install solar array without, without like negatively impacting the building. There's also just like plain inefficient proposed sites. Like some buildings, such as the Crozier-Williams Center, is pretty new, and it would hypothetically be able to support a solar array, practically speaking, and they have space for it. But because details such as the orientation or just not having enough sunlight ruin their potential. Like the Crow building has a great curved roof where if it was rotated 90 degrees, it would be perfect for solar, but instead it's facing the wrong direction, so we can't use it, unfortunately. And our exhibit on Earth Day, for our group, we featured a small solar panel for demonstration. We had a small printed summary of our research, and Ollie set up this wonderful little contraption. So we had like a small solar panel to show people that wanted to see what a solar panel actually looked and felt like. And we had a small circuit board which with a sensor and a light, and when light from a flashlight would hit the sensor, it would turn on the light connected to it. So we could sort of like demonstrate, how solar power works in a fun way that was accessible. So in terms of what we learned more about the entire cost benefit analysis and how very confusing it is. Like just the science of recycling it is incredibly, like takes a lot of knowledge to understand. So in the future, we'd probably like hone in more on one aspect, like say just the disposal part of it or just the assembly part. We probably make a more detailed timeline in terms of like project planning with more specific goals. From the beginning. It was tough because we would only meet for 1 day a week. So maybe more communication outside of class would be in the future. As a future research, we would probably do more deep exploration into the synthesis of PV modules, so how they're made, and calculate the environmental costs of the South Lot array on campus. So like, we know we saved like a lot of tons of CO2 in building it, but like how much did it take? So we can better, take that into account.
And to conclude, while the direct carbon emissions from solar energy is negligible, the waste generated from decommissioned modules is a significant consequence to consider. And a deeper dive into the beginning and end of life of the solar panels is needed to develop a helpful cost-benefit analysis. And then just relating it back to Con, still more research would need to be done on the beginning and end of the solar modules. But good news is that the South Lot array saved about 51.4 tons of CO2 emission. And before we finish up, we just like to thank you guys just for being here today. for Jen and the rest of the Goodwin Nearing Center for initiating and supporting this project, and Brianna for taking the time to help us understand a whole new side of energy that we wouldn't have thought of. And here are references.
So when you went through your review, was there any
Would you mind turning your I
industry?
can't hear on it.
Hold on one second.
Your volume on. That's what.
So Ollie, when you
So
went through your review, was there any industry or scientific research done on those end-of-life costs or the decommissioning cost of the solar panel?
Yeah, there's a good amount of research done. And there's different perspectives too. Some focus on the economic side of things, like how much is each gram of silicon recovered from the modules worth. But it's kind of like the farther you go, the more paths there are to take. So that's why one of our things learned was to hone in on one thing. But there is research, and there are currently studies working on different methods. One of the sources that I found had a table of maybe 20 different methods, including chemical and thermal and mechanical methods of different recycle processes. But even within those, like let's say chemical, it like diverges into multiple specific methods. And it was going way over my head. I didn't really understand what was going on. But there is research that's going on. And I think another important part of this project is just to bring awareness to that and the importance of that research. Just because right now there's not that much waste from the solar panels compared to what it's going to be like in 30 years.
We all have questions. I'll go. Okay. So I just, when you showed the simple payback, this Kristen, when you showed the simple payback you've got those installed panels. You said you're generating about 2/3 of the building's electricity, and that next year you break even. So I was really curious to know, following next year, how much money is the college going to save on their electricity bill? Whether you figured that out or you could.
I'm not sure. In the proposal and in the simulation, they never gave the annual use of energy by the building. I think the money saved would vary depending on time of day, time of year, because the price of energy fluctuates. It's been difficult. Like I have another project where we needed to know about energy use, and like it was difficult to pinpoint an exact cost of energy use in certain.
They have their bill. I mean, they have their bills. They pay their bills.
But
Oh, maybe it's not broken
yeah.
down by building, right?
yeah, I'm not sure exactly.
You got to put in metrics
Yeah.
to measure
Yeah, 'cause
the consumption.
That's how you persuade people to make that change.
Change.
I put solar panels on my house like 6 or 7 years ago. My electricity is $23 a month year round. That's huge savings. Most people are paying $250, $300 for, so that's really kind of helps promote the cause if you can show people how much money they can save.
Yeah, definitely.
So
this is
I'll go
Tom.
next. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
A couple questions here. One, a couple times you've been mentioning, like in the one slide that said the global waste by 2050 is 60, 70 megatons. Is that per year megatons, or is that accumulation from now until 2050?
That's a good question. I think it was accumulation.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Because
definitely
you
would have
didn't
to double
state
check,
it.
but I'm pretty
That's
sure
one
it was the
reason.
accumulation.
This is kind of like, just some nitnoid stuff here in regard. Another one was in the following slide, you talked about a low quality product for solar cells. Does that mean that do you have any explanation between a top quality and a low quality example or whatever, as far as what type of solar? I didn't realize there were multiple kinds.
Solar module?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just depends on the efficiency of the module. So the 30-year lifespan is not saying that after 30 years, the module is not able to generate energy. It's just that modules decrease efficiency at, I think it was 0.5% each year. So they just at a certain point, the panels might not be meeting the needs of whatever facility they're attached to. But like, let's say like on a building that needs a high amount of energy, after the panel has been installed for maybe 30 years, they can be decommissioned and then maybe used for something that requires less energy. So it's mostly just about the efficiency of the panel.
Okay, and then my last question goes back. You said about on the service building at 51 tons. Is that tons per year, or is that cumulative over the last 4 years or 5 years that your payback period?
I believe it's 51.4 tons per year in terms of.
So that'll be
uh,
on a continuing going forward basis also.
CO2, like from energy generation, so like fossil fuels or
Okay.
coal or.
And anytime you're doing something scientific, you have to include the units, because otherwise it's just a number. So I think I noticed the same thing
Yeah.
once or twice, and you just have to have the units, it per year, per hour, per day, per lifetime. That's a really critical thing for comprehension.
Thank you.
I have one
So-
question. Can I
Oh.
ask about the solar manufacturers? Do you have a sense in some of your work that the future panels are going to be made to recycle more of it, or in that direction? Do you feel we're going there? Or is it the manufacturers are making the panels and then it's up to everyone else to figure out how to recycle?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's going to be a shift, or there is currently a shift between SI modules and another version of solar panels. But even like just looking at the silicon-based PV panels, it was a lot for this project, but that is definitely something that manufacturers are taking into account. So I think that with the problem is with different modules, there's different ways to recycle. So hopefully those modules will be more easily recycled. But that would be further research to do on the shifts in what kind of modules are being used.
Thank you.
Okay, and I just wanted really quick, first of all, you guys did a great job considering me, and we started with this huge idea, and you did actually hone it down really well to give me some really good details on one piece of it, which is perfect. And I noticed a couple of your references definitely had the cradle to grave idea. I just wanted to ask if you make sure that all your references, if you have more than those, you put in the paper, because I'm definitely going to be looking into your references to get more information for my project. So good job tracking down those references.
Thank
And
you.
good job in general, but definitely
Thank you.
that my eye was on, okay, what information are they giving me to use for future? So that's great. Thank you.
And
Okay.
I just had a follow-up question on the recycling piece. You had currently available commercially methods that you were describing there, and I think you addressed some research as well with the different methods, or are the methods, the mechanical, chemical ones that are currently being used, or are those new techniques?
I think it depends if I understand your question. I think it depends on the technique. And also with the question asked earlier about the shift in modules, because if less PV modules are being used, like as we progress, then there's going to be less of an effort to make like recycling methods that are for those PV panels, and there's going to be a heavier focus on the newer
Yeah,
kinds
okay.
of modules. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly about what or about those recycling processes. So I can't really talk much about that.
Great. No, I enjoyed listening to your project. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you.
promote Kaelon, Caelon is the spelling you're looking for, I believe. Thank you.
What happened last time?
Urban trees?
Yep, trees.
Trees. There you go.
Hello.
Hello.
All right.
Okay. Oh, spoilers.
Hey, we can see it.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Perfect.
Great. So, hello, I'm Paloma.
I'm Kaylin.
I'm Pluto. And we're going to be talking about filling in the gaps of Groton's tree canopy.
The first question that we had after reading our prompt is, what is urban forestry? Urban forestry is the maintenance of trees in urban settings such as cities or towns, and that consists of planting trees as well as caring for them throughout their life, which means a lot of water, fertilizer, money, etc. Urban forests are very important to urban areas, as you can see in this image. And they have a lot of important benefits for cities and towns, including property value and energy saving.
So the next part of the prompt that we began to question was why we even want trees, and what specifically is the importance of trees, and why are we trying to promote that. So there's a bunch of things, as you can see on the slide. Trees reduce runoff and reduce surface and air temperatures. And this reduction of temperatures lowers the need for air conditioning when a tree like shades a building, which lowers carbon emissions. And trees also absorb pollutants, and which increases the air quality and the water quality. And the reduction of temperatures by trees reduces the urban heat island effect, which I'll talk about later. Because trees absorb the heat instead of radiating it back out like buildings. So that's very important especially in our case study, which we'll talk about later. And trees improve the sense of community by providing a shady space for people to eat outside and be members of their community. So what is the heat island effect? As you can see in the graph, it shows that like urban areas are much higher than other areas, rural areas, or like suburban rural areas. And that is because buildings, roads, and parking lots reflect and re-emit the sun's heat. And whereas trees and other vegetation don't. So in areas where there's a lot of buildings and roads, like a city, there's not as many trees to absorb the heat. And so that's why it's called a heat island. It's just much hotter.
So, why is all of this an issue of environmental justice? Well, the lack of tree canopy and all of its environmental and community benefits are disproportionately lacking in marginalized communities, which include people of color as well as low-income households. Specifically, towns with generational wealth that have had the resources to cultivate and manage trees are able to benefit from all of the benefits of having municipal trees, whereas communities that have not had the same opportunities to build the wealth and cultivate their tree canopy don't get to benefit from all the good parts of having trees, and put the individuals in those communities at higher risk of heat-related illness, air quality issues, and various things like that.
Unfortunately, we were not able to actually be at the Earth Day Expo because we're all botany majors and there was a botany event. But instead, we decided to make an online brochure, kind of summarizing all of the information we just told you. Here are some pictures of it. We created a QR code And yeah, we also included graphs and website links to some of your resources as well.
So one of the things that was on that website was the tree equity score map of the United States. This is a map that provides for many municipal cities and towns like a letter grade or a number grade for the tree canopy in those given areas. We found that this was actually a really valuable resource. Here you can see that Groton, Connecticut has a score of 87, which is a pretty good score. However, the area that we will focus on in the rest of our presentation, which is the Five Corners neighborhood, some of y'all might be familiar with that, had a score of 67, which puts it in a very high priority category for where we should focus on, or where people should focus on planting trees and increasing tree canopy coverage. And so just overall, this tree equity score website does a lot of work in organizing and putting information into like where trees should be planted and what communities are in that area and stuff like that. So we wanted to flag it as a really important resource that could be used in further presentations or studies and stuff like that.
So as Paloma just said, we focused on the Five Corners neighborhood. And so the map on the left is the heat map that we got from Ann Schmidt, our project contact. She sent us a link of a presentation that had a bunch of maps. This is a heat map. It's like a vulnerability map. So the darker areas are people and areas that are most vulnerable to heat or have the most excessive heat. So the largest part that's towards like on the water is the Five Corners neighborhood, which we have the Google Maps screenshot of on the left. And we'll talk about that next.
So when we wanted to do a site assessment of the Five Corners neighborhood. So we went into the field, and the first thing we noticed was the high amounts of pavement. Again, if you're not familiar with the Five Corners neighborhood, if you're familiar with the electric boat, that is kind of where it is. And a lot of what we were noticing was actually like seas of parking lots directly next to it. And as we stepped out of the car to like begin our field assessment, our site assessment, we were immediately feeling the effects of pavement, high amounts of pavement. Like we were all like, wow, we wish we had our sunglasses, because the light and heat was reflecting off of the ground into our eyes. So immediately we became worried that this would be a place where the heat island effect is occurring. And as we continued to walk the site, we noticed that a lot of this was sloping a lot of this was on a gradual slope directly into the Thames. So that led us to kind of focusing our work on how we could mitigate stormwater runoff through increasing permeability of the areas around, and planting trees to increase that permeability. So to kind of visualize what we think could happen in this space to improve the tree canopy and benefit stormwater mitigation, we made a map. You can see outlined in red is the large amount of parking lots that are in this area, and then the green polygons are different sites that we visited and are flagging as potential places that could have trees planted there.
So these are some pictures we took at the sites we visited. So the first picture is an empty lot where they're like trying to grow grass. And we saw a lot of people, we came around lunchtime and we saw a lot of people eating lunch and taking their breaks. I'm not sure if you can see there's like this overhang from the parking structure, and there were people sitting under the shade of that. And even though this whole lot is empty, how beautiful would it be if there was a nice tree and a couple of picnic benches for people to take breaks? And then the second picture is, it's hard to see because there was a car parked there, but it's actually a pretty large triangle of grass and dirt, like used as a makeshift parking spot, even though there's like a million other parking spots. So we thought this would be another good place because, as you can see, it's going downhill, and that would be a place where a tree could capture some runoff. And then the third picture is, you can see there's a sidewalk, and then it's been paved over like 2 separate times. And we thought that was a good area, again, to rip up and plant trees, because as you can see, it's sloping down again, and it would make a lot of sense for trees to be planted there to mitigate the stormwater runoff and provide shade for those cars parking on the side. And then a couple more pictures. The first picture on the left is we thought was a good example of trees being planted next to a parking lot. And the second picture, or the second and third pictures, are of the same lot. It's the Jones parking lot, and it looks like it's used as a parking lot, even though there's a million other parking lots. But it was empty when we got there, and there's a bunch of grass, so it looks like it hadn't been used. So that was another spot we thought could be used to plant trees.
And again, we just wanted to reiterate that doing all of this will exponentially improve the community. As Kaylin said, it would help with stormwater management, which will allow more spaces for water to be absorbed into the ground instead of just polluting the Thames more. As well, it would help a lot of the workers there and the residents there, because it will offer shade and increased air quality and a decreased heat, which will overall help with work morale. And yeah.
These are our sources, and we would like to thank Ann Schmidt, our project contact, who sent us the link to a very helpful Groton website, Michelle Fitzpatrick, the Groton Conservation Commission, Jen, and the Goodwood Nearing Center.
All right. Very good. That my view is that's an excellent qualitative view. But let's take the example you gave, because that land is owned by a corporation, and corporations are profit motivated. So is there anything in your research that says, hey, if they planted 15 trees, there'd be some return on investment to the corporation other than the qualitative, which is good. But again, corporations don't necessarily respond to qualitative incentives. Was there anything in your reviews that came up with some quantitative information that could help?
I wouldn't say necessarily like a specific resource. However, in like choosing the sites that we wanted to plant in, we did make sure to include some that looked more private, and then others that looked like public land, like next to the sidewalk and stuff like that, kind of to address the concern of private landowners might not want to use their space to plant trees, so then that could be more of a place where you pursue city interest. Again, in general, when talking about tree planting, there's always the benefit of it improves land value to have trees on sites. And if you think about parking lots, to park near a grocery store, you always want to park under the shady tree to offer your car some shade. So not as much like a specific resource that said that, but there are a lot of convincing points. And definitely, I think the next step would be to follow up with the landowners or the city who controls this land and kind of discuss with them the benefits in a convincing way. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so,
This is Tom Olson. One of the things about electric boat is that every dollar that goes into the place comes from the federal government. And so did you do any research to see if there was any effort from a federal government perspective to be incentivizing their contractors to be able to, as they develop infrastructure to support execution of the government contracts, to be able to have a write-off to say that it's an allowable expense, because that's how, the only thing an electrical boat's going to do is an allowable expense
Right.
to the contract. And that's how it gets paid for. And so it's a matter of getting some incentives built in to the funding into the legislation through the Authorization Appropriations Act to get government funding for these type of efforts from an environmental perspective. I just point that out to you, as you might not have all the nuances of that. But the other thing you mentioned is one of the things that we have here from our perspective is that you're talking about like some of these city right-of-ways for where's the street end and where's the private parcels start. Because I saw one example there. In regard to, that's one of the city issues as opposed to the town issues that we have to deal with here in Groton also. And then again, is similar to on the federal level, would it be worth our while from a town effort relative to incentivizing planting of trees relative to private individuals? And an offset potentially, because one of the discussions the town's having, you mentioned all this MS4 stuff in regard to runoff. Again, city runoff is in this example as you were, but the town's also looking at the MS4 establishment. The state of Connecticut has allowed towns to assess a fee for municipal stormwater. And I don't know if you got involved into that as far as, and having an offset relative to amount of tree plantings. I don't know if you did any research on that area either.
We didn't do research specifically on offsets. However, I know right now there's a lot of grant funding for specifically stormwater management. In our research, we talked to someone from the Nature Conservancy who in our write-up, we actually are going to add her as like a potential source to reach out to, but her name is Jess, and she is working with the Nature Conservancy specifically in New London and Groton, and she is a grant writer focused on stormwater management and stuff like that. But she was able to talk to us about how there's a lot of funding specifically for stormwater management proposals surrounding trees and stuff like that. So not necessarily offsets that we looked into, but we did see that there was a lot of funding opportunities.
Thank you.
awesome. So,
Question for Dave. In the recent zoning rewrite, aren't there requirements for any new parking lots to have trees in it?
Yeah, there is both for there's requirements for new parking as well as for street trees too. So anytime a project comes to the town in the form of a new site plan, a new subdivision, we definitely put that in there.
Yeah, so it's good for new projects.
Yes, for
but
new projects.
all this old stuff.
And that, and that is a challenge. That's totally a challenge because a lot of these places that have been around for a long time, those trees have died. And there's another thing in our regs too that calls for the long-term maintenance of trees and vegetation within the property too. So there's other ways that we can get to it, but a lot of these changes are newer. So, but we're definitely putting it in, like some of the language actually has to be as part of the approval. Yep.
Okay.
Well, that's great to hear.
Can I ask one question about the, when you looked at the five corners and you looked at the impact of the EV parking lot, which is massive, considering parking lots and it's what it's doing. But as you back away into the residential areas, did you find that the tree canopy there is as thick, perhaps, as further away from, let's say, EV parking lots? Did you find any sort of a gradation between them? Did you have a chance to look at the communities next to the parking lot at all, to look at their tree cover?
Definitely, like not like officially, we did focus on like literally the area with the parking lots. However, like as we parked our cars and kind of drove around to assess the site further, we did notice that like past where those parking lots are, there were some businesses which also seemed to be having issues. There was like a automobile place near Sacred Heart, I think, the school. Kind of in that area, we were noticing like some other sites that like could have been unpaved and added trees in those areas that didn't necessarily look like they were being used. And then neighborhoods like houses in the area definitely had some had trees in their front lots, but there were also some open lots that were like connected to houses that we like were mentioning as we walked by, like, oh, that would be a great spot for a tree. Oh, that would be a great spot for a tree. So that's always another approach to increasing tree canopy, is to talk to homeowners and promote it that way. But we didn't focus on that specifically.
Thank you.
And along those lines, hi, this is Anne. Good to see you guys. Did you take a drive further south where the socioeconomic factors are quite different than the northern part of the city of Groton? So south of the where the area where the golf course is along the shore there.
Mm-hmm.
And because that did it, and if you
Yeah,
did
that's
you
a
drive
whole
down
different
there?
world. It's a whole
Yeah,
different
it
world.
really looks very
That's where
different.
I live. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing, the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't done that, do that. And check out the census information for that group. It's a nice contrast. You did a great job. I really enjoyed listening to you guys. And I would add, I think Kristen also mentioned this for the previous presenter, add your where you got your data. So the scores, the 87 and the 67, I think it was. Yeah. I saw something recently come from the Washington Post that had different kinds of numbers than I've seen in other places. So it does really vary on how things are scored. So it's great though. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great job.
I just had this is Kristen. I just had I think a nice little grassroots project of a little community of school children from Groton. It would be great PR for EB to put in, like, whether they pay or whether the government pays them back. I mean, they're huge in this area, and it would be a fun project to just kind of make it happen. You know, lovely little college people go in and say, hey, we have this idea. What are they going to say? You know, they look like jerks if they say no.
And maybe make that a project for next year's class.
Yeah.
Well, and I had one other comment that one of your early slides when you talked about the benefits of trees, I don't think it said they literally take carbon dioxide out of the air and turn it to oxygen. I think you said they put shade and they help reduce climate change, but the specific task of removing carbon dioxide, I think, should be addressed in your slide.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Okay, so two things really quick. One is that if you do take that drive down south of EB and Pfizer,
Avery
if you do it, what's that?
Is it towards the like Yukon Avery Point?
Yes. So, yes,
okay. Yes, we did. Sorry, we did.
Beach.
We did
Ocean
go that
Beach.
Yeah, because right now Tyler Avenue, which
Eastern Point Beach,
goes across there, they have flowering trees that like I go out of my way to see every year. So
yes,
it's amazing.
I did notice that. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't exactly sure where you were talking about.
Yep,
south
that's
of
exactly what
water.
we're talking about. You can see the difference in this. You can see the socioeconomic difference, right?
Yes, I thought it was very interesting. As you got closer to Pfizer, there seemed to be like more like new trees being planted. So definitely,
Pfizer
like
puts a lot of effort into the groundskeeping. They come in, they have gardening people specifically to put flowers and shrubs and stuff in. Yeah, so they definitely put more of their money into that than EB does, for the reason that Tom noted, because EB, you know, they get their money from the federal government and they only do what the federal government asks them to do. The second thing I want to point out is you talked about, I can't believe all these parking spaces. Believe it or not, with how big all that parking is, it's still not enough. People still can't find enough parking that work at EB. So those parking spaces are like gold. And you may not have seen it used then, but literally people fight over the parking there. So So that was a great place to look, though. That was a good project.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so next is Kendall.
Stewardship? Is that
Yeah.
stewardship?
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
All right.
So for some reason I have to like quit Zoom and then reopen it to share my screen. I thought I had it all set up because I had it on like allowing.
Oh,
screen
yeah,
share.
I
Okay,
did quit
we
and
can,
reopen.
we can hear you, but you need to up the gain on your microphone. Oh.
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 I think she was having trouble accessing her document.
They must have the same IT person as Groton has.
Oh, that hurt.
Wasn't against me.
Kendall had to leave and come back and
Okay.
because it wouldn't let her share her presentation. So just bear with us.
Sure.
While we're waiting for.
You might need to give her permissions again when she comes back in.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah, when she
sure.
comes back.
Yep, I will.
So one of the things that strikes me is that there's some good information here, not just because of the information, but because of where it's coming from.
Mhm.
That we got to think of some way, not just get it on our website, which is kind of what we did last year, but somehow package this to either get it into Greater Groton or before the town council. I mean, some excerpts of it.
Mhm.
I mean, let's think about that, guys, is how do we use some of this?
Island stuff working.
Well, yes, that was,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
yeah,
perfect.
we don't think about that, yeah.
It
All-
There we
looks all
go.
good?
Yep.
Okay.
Muted though.
Oh,
Unmute
okay.
yourselves and introduce
Yes,
yourselves.
speakers.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm Kendall.
And I'm Annie.
And we will be presenting on our topic, which was the value and importance of environmental stewardship. So it's just a quick overview of what we'll be talking about. So we have an overview of the project, the topic, and what deliverables we developed. Then we have our plan, kind of what we thought about to achieve those goals, then what we ended up actually doing with a timeline, and then as well as our results and the outcomes and any learning experiences / future advice. So for a little bit of background, our topic was learning more about environmental stewardship and kind of communicating that to the general public. Especially in the face of the climate crisis, this has become such an important concept, but unfortunately, a lot of times it is a very broad term and that can feel stifling for a lot of people or very overwhelming, and that can lead to no action rather than something being done to kind of just leave a positive impact on the natural spaces around you, just help restore them, take care of them, things like that. So our goal for the project, the main goal was to educate the general public about stewardship and specific ways that they can get involved. So we wanted to include a definition of stewardship just to get a better understanding, big picture as well as small like local things that people can do, and different ways of involvement. So for example, volunteering through the Groton Conservation Commission or just incorporating stewardship practices into their daily lives. We also wanted to focus on youth, so kind of focusing on kids, teens, and younger families, because those are the next generations that, will be kind of carrying on the stewardship practices. So it's really important that they are aware of them. So our initial ideas were to create an infographic detailing conservation at 2 Groton properties, the Cott Family Park and the River Road Conservation Area. We also thought about doing community outreach, maybe through some kind of volunteer event or a presentation. And then we also wanted to analyze and present on different types of stewardship. So our finalized plan, after kind of going through that, meeting with our project contacts, so we created a poster detailing what stewardship is, as well as an infographic that was kind of a guideline that people could use, you know, when they're out doing things. If they need inspiration, they can kind of consult that. We also use the Cott Family Park as a case study of nature engagement. And then we also presented at the Earth Day Fair to various community members, and we kind of referred them as well to the GCC if they wanted to get more involved with local initiatives. And then we also were able to learn more, but also to educate others through in-depth conversations with people who were attending the fair, as well as a survey that we included. So in terms of a timeline, so over spring break, we divided the stewardship research between us. So Annie took on the more big picture stuff, whereas I was looking at stuff relating to Groton. So Michelle actually sent me a stewardship report for the Groton Conservation Commission, which was super helpful. So that's kind of what we did over spring break. And then the week after, we actually contacted Maggie Redfern at the Con Arboretum to kind of get some tips about outreach, like kind of how we can connect with the general public in a meaningful way. And then the first/second week of April, we drove to Cott Park, kind of walked through it, and just took notes of different stewardship ideas. So kind of, you know, engaging with nature. What do we see? What animals do we hear? If there's any trash or litter, like we picked it up and disposed of it properly. We were kind of also seeing how people were using the space and what kind of activities they were engaging in. We also looked at trail markings, just things like that. And then during this time, we also developed a QR code with our stewardship guideline to include at the Earth Day Fair. And then the second/third week of April, we made the poster for the fair. So it had 3 different sections. So the first was about our case study of Cott Park with a bunch of photos. And then we had another section with an overview of stewardship. And then the third section was our infographic and the survey. And then Saturday, April 20th, we presented at the Earth Day Fair.
So pretty much when it came to our plan, we were pretty good about staying on track with our timeline. We had everything completed beforehand. And then with our survey, we had asked 4 questions, and we kind of tried to do it on a scale of 1 to 5 to try and just gauge where people were at. So 1 was being like not at all, whereas 5 was completely like. So like a couple of the questions we asked was, how familiar are you with stewardship prior to this? Had you heard of this term before? Was it vague, broad, unclear, and different components like that? The second thing was, can you think of any ways in which you have engaged in stewardship throughout your life? So this could be small things like picking up trash or watching out for like trail markers, things like that, using reusable bags. The third question was based on our presentation and what we had presented and taught them. Are there any specific actions that you plan on taking in your future? So like that was kind of detailed, like oriented towards volunteering with the Groton Conservation Commission, spending more time outside and things like that. And then our final question was, do you feel better equipped to engage in stewardship locally after today? So this is just what our infographic visual looked like. It had a basic definition, what big picture action versus small scale. It's like big picture was like picking up trash, recycling, using reusable bags, whereas small scale was like trail maintenance, documentation, and small things like that. It also included like how to identify a dying or a dead tree, a report to the how to report to the Conservation Commission, things like trees, campfires, dumping, how to identify erosion, vandalism, fires, and different things like that. So as it came to outcomes, we were able to talk to a lot of different people, and it was overall pretty successful. One of the major things was people weren't really doing our survey. We didn't get any responses to the survey itself, but rather we were able to have engaging conversations within with the community members, which we thought was overall really beneficial to the project. And then another thing that we looked at was a lot of the people that we had the conversations with were already saying, oh, these are already things I do in my everyday life, which is great to hear. But it didn't really like help increase stewardship per se. But we were able to get a couple of different families to take the Groton Conservation Commission cards, which Michelle had given us to hand out. And people seem to be very receptive of what stewardship was and how they can overall get involved, which ultimately was our goal of making sure people understood what stewardship is and how they can be easily be a steward. So looking towards the future, we would like for next year, they can continue to discuss within community members at the Earth Day Expo itself. We were able to have engaging conversations with people. We actually met a host of an environmental radio show. We also met a guy who had helped install wind energy at the New London train station, which was really cool to be able to talk to those different people. But one of the things that we noticed was there weren't as many families that we were able to talk to as we had hoped. So for a potential build upon is to talk to go to different schools within the community and be able to talk to like the middle and high school age range as a way to like increase stewardship within our future, because ultimately it's the younger generations that are going to be continuing on with this. And so we just wanted to say thank you to everyone that had helped us out, Jen, Michelle and Bray, who are project contacts, Groton Conservation Commission, and Gabonian. Thank you.
I have a question. So for you personally, do you have the two of you, have you increased your understanding of stewardship, and are you more likely now to actually, when you're wandering around a property, think more about stewardship, and maybe even go out, specifically look at the trails, like, you know, Groton, the town of Groton has on their website, here's all the town-owned properties have trails. Are you more likely to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, for me, definitely. I just feel like this project helped me become a lot more aware. I feel like I like to go out in nature a lot. Like I'll go on hikes and stuff like that, and I'll always like pick up trash and stuff. But you know, like I'll kind of, you know, put my headphones on, have like a podcast going, and I feel like it's sometimes that disconnects me a bit from like my actual surroundings. So I feel like after doing this, I'm able to like better interact with, you know, what's around me rather than just kind of like being like, oh, I'm gonna go for a walk outside. But like now I can kind of, I feel like I'm listening more for like different sounds, and also kind of looking at the trees and being like, oh, do those look healthy? Is this kind of a space that might need some restoration? Like I feel like it's definitely made me more aware of those things.
What about you, Annie?
I feel like it also has definitely helped me make me more aware of like the different things. I guess I never really realized that like trail marking is like a part of stewardship. So I guess that's something that I've definitely like learned throughout the project. And I think definitely something I can incorporate more often, not only here, but like back at home, because I use like, we have like a meadows back at my hometown that I walk all the time. So I think that's definitely something I can be more aware of back home. And here.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, questions from? We're good. Hey, thank you very much. We're big on stewardship. That was our kind of major thrust for this year. Yeah.
I have a quick question. This is Bray. When you were at the Earth Day, did you feel that the topic might have been a little heavy for young people to understand what we're trying to do? And if so, how would you reapproach that to
Yeah.
get families more involved?
Yes, we did notice that because we did have like a couple families with younger kids, but the kids, like while we were kind of presenting, like the parent was listening, but the kids were more so interested in like the stickers and like the pictures. Like they weren't really like absorbing the information. I think it was kind of, for if they're younger, it can be more difficult for them to kind of grasp the concept. So I think trying to simplify it a bit more. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job of trying to simplify it and get and like divvy it up into like big picture stuff that is more, you know, like tangible, and then like also the small scale stuff. But I think kind of if we can figure out a better way to get their attention from the start and kind of be able to hold it better. So maybe if we had included like more like visuals about stewardship, like that could have been helpful, but that was definitely something that we noticed. That was a challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for
Awesome. That was great. Thanks.
number 6.
Yeah.
Oh, five. Sorry. It's only 5.
Yeah, number 5. So that would be Charlotte. is the name. It should be anyway. That's the POCD one.
There we go. I don't know why it does that.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Sorry, we're just getting situated. I'm gonna share screen. Da-da-da. And then present button, slideshow. Perfect. Okay, I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Sylvia.
And today we're going to be talking about our project, which was revision recommendations for specifically Section 210 of the 2016 Groton Plan of Conservation and Development, short for, well, POCD for short. Okay. So to provide an overview of our project, we were interested in enhancing sustainable practices in the POCD plan. But first, we reviewed it and found a section that we saw room for improvement. Specifically, our section that we found that we wanted to improve was the fact that there are a lack of CSAs in Groton, and we did not see a kind of an outline of effective methods to kind of establish them. So to kind of prove the significance of CSAs, we conducted research on how they can promote food justice. And we also reached out to local farms outside of the town of Groton for more information on like the benefits and how they've had success in implementing CSA practices on their farms. So then once we conducted this research, reached out to farms and kind of did more like investigation with Fresh New London, we formulated this research into a recommendation essay, emphasizing the needs for a methods outline and the POCD to effectively implement CSAs in the town of Groton. Sorry, and just to make a note, this formulated research was our deliverable.
So after reviewing the POCD, we were originally interested in recommending sustainable agriculture methods and how Groton farms could become more sustainable and organic. We spoke of going to local farms and analyzing their practices. Another area of interest was to investigate Groton's grocery stores to see how they could offer more affordable, healthful, and local produce. We discussed these ideas with Ann Schmidt. We talked about potentially investigating how farms become organic, sustainable agriculture practices, and certified organic farms in Connecticut. Then we changed the plan to investigate community-supported agriculture and its ability to promote to promote food justice. Sustainable development looks like a sufficient economy, a healthy environment, as well as a nurturing and supportive community for everyone's well-being. So we wanted to incorporate how to promote social justice within food systems. The term food justice is a powerful mobilizing concept to reshape food systems, but it holds many meanings and continues to evolve. Although definitions vary, food justice refers to social movements and principles rooted in human rights and justice. It sees fresh, healthy, culturally appropriate, environmentally sustainable food as a human right and addresses structural barriers to that right. It can be organized into 5 main overlapping themes. Social inequity describes persistent challenges to equity in the food system and the existence of structural inequality and discrimination. Social equity then looks like equal access and opportunity. Food security specifically describes equitable access to nutritious and affordable food. Then food systems transformation calls for structural and redistributive changes in food systems. Efforts involve food governance and policy reform at both the local and national level. Fourth, community agency and participation refers to community rights to participate and engage in food policy decision-making and governance, community resistance to and disruption of the existing corporate food regime, and community-led, driven, and/or owned food solutions.
And lastly, of course, environmental sustainability describes the need for food systems that minimize resource depletion and unacceptable environmental impacts. Okay, so now we just want to provide kind of an overview of what community supported agriculture is, aka CSAs. So there are alternative food sources and methods for growing produce in comparison to industrial agriculture and factory farms. CSAs create a direct relationship between the farmer and consumer through its subscription-based system in which consumers support the farmer financially by paying an upfront payment at the beginning of each growing season. So to elaborate further, they operate through the membership program, and a person become a member of the farm and receive shares of the food produced for the farm. These shares are often like boxes of produce, or they can go hand pick the fruit or vegetables within the farms. And then they can have a variety of payment methods, which can be seen as economically beneficial for, economically more feasible for the consumer as well. So it's more, so more people can kind of get involved and also access more healthful foods. And then we wanted to kind of make the argument of how CSAs promote food justice in addition to benefiting the environment. So the CSA model promotes vast ecological benefits through its diverse selection of crops, which can help increase soil fertility, avoid environmental consequences by refraining from the use of chemical pesticides and fossil fuels. Other sustainable methods we found were like crop rotation or crop coverage. Then we found through our research, they also promote food justice in communities through addressing food disparities across low income and marginalized communities. To elaborate kind of what we said earlier, like having different payment, not different payment options, but kind of a payment where the farmer can kind of help not incentivize, but kind of help the consumer buy the produce. And then we found like certain CSAs called the BIPOC owned CSAs, Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned. They have successfully and positively influenced food and climate justice. And one we researched specifically was Dreaming Out Loud in Washington. It's a BIPOC owned CSA, which has helped make significant strides in addressing access to healthy foods within the local communities. And then we conducted an analysis of Groton's demographics and farms to emphasize again the need to improve methods for implementing CSAs in the town of Groton. So we saw that in the POCD as of right now for the 2016 edition, section 210, it does support, so it mentions focusing on supporting the business of agriculture and preserving farmland, in addition to mentioning the Groton farms should consider CSA programs. However, it still lacks a discussion of methods to motivate Groton farmers to establish these CSA programs and ways to support nonprofit food justice organizations devoted to growing and distributing food, pushing for land sovereignty movements, providing educational opportunities, etc. And then we said that the fact that Groton currently lacks CSAs is a problem as of right now. 11.7% of Groton town residents are food insecure. 9% suffer from poverty. So knowing that CSAs have the ability to promote food justice, as we saw with our research through the BIPOC owned CSAs, we really do believe that, again, emphasizing an outline for methods to implement CSAs within the POCD will have the ability to promote food justice and address food disparities within the town of Groton. So yeah, now we're gonna go into local CSA efforts.
We also examined 2 nearby community-supported agriculture initiatives that can inspire efforts to establish CSAs in Groton. So the first we examined was Fresh New London, which is a nonprofit food justice organization committed to empowering youth and connecting community by working toward food sovereignty. Although small, they are involved in many efforts centered around growing and distributing food, supporting social movements, and providing educational opportunities. They run 3 community gardens in North New London with community plots to rent and stack beds that are free to pick from. Fresh also maintains another garden that provides for their CSA. Along with this weekly distribution of food mid-June through mid-October, people can access fresh produce at their Pay What You Can stand. For those who want to grow food around their house, Fresh staff and youth build and install raised garden beds in people's backyards. Their youth programming gives young people tools to reshape food systems by involving them in the entire gardening process and providing opportunities to grow leadership skills. Fresh operates Food to the People, a mutual aid style pantry that serves as a model for food assistance with dignity. From March to October, they also host Saturday skill shares, workshops, and collective work days where community members learn about urban agriculture together. Fresh could serve as an inspiration for similar work in Groton.
And then additionally, we examined Provider Farm, and we also reached out to them kind of to see their initiatives and success they've had in operating their own CSA. So they have achieved their goals of remaining sustainable by employing a variety of sustainable practices aimed at promoting soil health and biodiversity. Some of them I kind of mentioned earlier, by again, like avoiding synthetic chemicals on their crops, and kind of using crop rotation methods for sustainable practices. They've also helped make their produce more accessible to the community's wider demographic through social media and local flyer campaigns. They've also continued to maintain these connections with their families through weekly newsletters during the CSA season, and have open to the public farm events each year to build the community more, to further build the CSA community. So we said that, or we made the argument that these forms of advertising and connection have proved to be successful for Provider Farm and would be beneficial and important for the town of Groton and POCD to consider when implementing CSAs, so the town can make more work towards a more sustainable and equitable food system overall. So our conclusion was to promote food justice. We believe it's imperative that the 2026 POCD outlines methods to motivate Groton's farmers to establish CSA programs and ways to support nonprofit food justice organizations. A possible objective could be to obtain a state grant to finance an organization that expands the established Groton community garden. And now we just want to provide some reflections. So personally, we learned how to communicate. We learned to just kind of communicate with outside organizations and kind of just how to adapt. We reached out to other local farms, but unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, we were not able to meet with everyone. So of the farms, Provider Farm was the one we reached out to, and other ones such as Full Heart, we just unfortunately did not get to see their perspective on how the CSAs have worked for them. But to kind of go off of that, we learned to communicate outside organizations. Within us, we found ways to manage our time effectively and kind of just communicate and being flexible. And then for advice for up-and-coming GNCE students, we really think it would be beneficial to stick to a timeline and make a timeline, because schoolwork gets in the way and sometimes it's easy to kind of push it off, and obviously that's not effective. So another thing we also want to kind of elaborate on is to not overcomplicate the project. We found at the beginning for us, we wanted to do a lot of case studies on the farms, and kind of with the grocery store instance, we potentially wanted to survey customers in the grocery stores to see what type of produce they wanted to see. And just because of lack of time, we weren't able to kind of address or get to all these ideas. But I think just having a strong one idea that's feasible with your time is very important. And then looking for the future of the project, we'd like the GCC to consider our recommendations for the 2026 POCD. So next steps would include planning strategies to establish CSA programs, kind of communicating with locals what they want to see as well, and potentially the government for funding so we can actually see implementation. We also want to thank the following: Jennifer, Michelle, and Provider Farm, Megan, the GCC, and our fellow GNCE peers. They all helped kind of guide our research and provided feedback on how to kind of go into a certain pathway, because the POCD has lots of sustainability outlines, and we kind of just were really interested in agriculture. So kind of just communicating with everyone and seeing like what advice they had, so we wouldn't go too broad, and but also could target one certain area of the POCD was very helpful. So thank you. Oh, sorry. And thank you very much. Sorry.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Question from the, yes.
This is Tom. A couple items. I found this very interesting and very focused, and I really like that, because from an action within the town, we really haven't done anything in this area as far as from the Conservation Commission. There's really nobody in the town that's worried about agriculture, contrary to like up in Ledyard, to the north, they have their own agricultural commission and kind of would worry about this. But I noticed, first one question was, where is the Provider Farm again? Where are they from? In Salem?
Salem. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Salem.
Yeah, because I didn't know, because I see one that I've been active with is with the Stone Acres Farm in Stonington, because they actually have people from Ledyard I know over there, because they offer a lot of other things other than just the food. They've got yoga classes and all this other kind of stuff that they suck people in to have a bigger base to be able to for support, so they're not dealing with volunteers. They're and also with it, like the Denison Pequot, they surprisingly a very small plot, but they get a lot out of it. But they're very volunteer focused because they have a big volunteer base to support them. And I was wondering if you'd done anything with the Grasso Tech as far as for the environmental technology, or see if they would be interested in something like this. Is another area between that and the food service thing. It might, and also the town of Groton Board of Education has this whole truck that runs around that's farm to table type of stuff for the schools, and just trying to take a look at theirs as far as where they're also going is another area that we need to probably put into consideration. But the last question I had for you is, you cited 11% food insecurity. Where did you get that number?
We found that number from the demographics of town of Groton. I can forward you the link. I apologize for not having the sources slide, but we did like look up demographics of town of Groton, and that's where we got that number from.
Interesting. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
Awesome.
It's Kristen. I think it's a really interesting topic and timely and important. The one confusion or the challenge I see is that I belong to various CSAs over the past, and particularly organic produce is significantly more expensive than, mass-produced agricultural stuff you can get in the grocery store. So there's a little bit of a, how do you bridge that gap from people who are food insecure or low income, and then you have this very expensive product? Like how, unless it's run by a nonprofit, as you're suggesting, or a grant, but I mean, in the real world that we live in, how do we bridge that gap?
I think that's a great question, and one that definitely needs to be investigated further. But something that we found interesting across our research is Groton currently does have like this community farm, or it's called but what you do is you rent out plots so people can kind of come and like grow their own stuff. But stuff like, I think methods such as that, it's not, again, like you have to pay for like not even just the plots, and then going into the CSAs, then you have to buy, to your point, more expensive organic produce. But I almost think if we could link the two, and like maybe not necessarily a CSA, maybe that's not the answer, but having a community where like they can go out to use these plots, right? And kind of just grow their own stuff with the guidance of maybe local farmers. So maybe like there's almost, again, this is a little crazy, but almost a deal between the farmer and the customer to help maybe like their farmland or their plots. And then in exchange, they can get produce. I mean, that could be an iffy gray area, but there's just so many, like there are plots within the town of Groton that are kind of just, they're there, you can buy them, but it would be neat to see a connection between like farmers the town of Groton farmers and then these plots and then their customers almost. But I don't know, I think that's definitely to lower the cost of organic foods from farms is it's a big problem, which I don't have a direct answer for that, but I think on a local level, we can kind of come up with a deal or something to kind of make it more feasible for just people of lower income.
Could I add a comment?
Yeah.
Just that, I don't know if you've seen this. I've seen some articles about these, what they're calling, I think they're calling a food farms or urban forests, where there's a conscious effort in cities like Detroit, where they're taking, big tracts of land and literally planting fruit-bearing trees or vegetables so that anybody can just walk by and pick it. So I don't know if you were aware of that, but it's kind of cool to check it out.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that'd be really cool. Yeah.
So I just want to say you guys did a great job narrowing down your project, because you had so many ideas, and this is really a great product that you came up with. I had a question along the lines that you were just talking about with the low income angle and the higher cost of organic vegetables, for example. Are you aware of any programs that CSAs can accept, like SNAP? There are?
Yes. I mean, when we talked to Provider Farm, they actually said that they use SNAP within their programs. I mean, if like local farms are incorporating it, I don't see why it's not a possibility for the town of Groton. But like, what do you think? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I 100% think like programs such as SNAP would be very beneficial to consider as well.
Great
Can-
job.
Can you close your presentation so we can see more of each other?
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's okay. So I actually use, like Kristen, I've tried Full Heart Farm CSA, I've done Provider Farm, and I've done Fresh. That's the first one I did, but I'm glad that you can't put more information about what Fresh is. I was thinking that we might want to try to find out if there's a way to take the Fresh concept and bring that to Groton, because that they are focused on low income, right? I mean, they're specifically looking for helping low income people get the foods. Did I understand that correctly? Yeah, so anyway, thank you. Yeah, this was great. We didn't have a lot of awareness about this on the commission, so this was great, giving us a topic for us to start digging into.
Cool. I'm glad you found it helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
I would like to just thank all the students. This year, this was great. This whole process, from start to finish. Obviously, we learned a lot from since last year with how to do this, but and the committee will talk about it. But I just want to thank everybody for their work on this, because we have 5 really good presentations and 5 really good ideas to play with. So thank you.
And I just wanted to thank, can you mute your thing? I sound like really important when I echo like that. I just wanted to thank all of you, Michelle, especially for spearheading this, but Anne, Kristen, all the other commission members, like so many of you dedicated so much of your time to helping our students. So there's a reason why they had such awesome presentations, and it's because of all the support. So thank you so much. We appreciate this partnership. We appreciate your time. And man, was Earth Day Expo fun. That was wonderful to be with all of you. It was great.
All right, so Larry, turn it back to you as a chair. My presentation of the projects as the spearhead of this is complete, except for, of
Alright.
course, getting the online stuff together, but the presentations are done.
Hey, Jennifer, could you stick around for a few minutes?
Yes, I can. Did you need
Okay.
just me though?
No, just you. That's fine.
Okay.
I think, I mean, I guess we can all share, but my observation was that there's
Yeah.
been a step up in quality from last year to this year in terms of, I guess, several aspects. One is the thought process of the students, the ability to present, and the content, and some of the, and the ideas, as Michelle said, there was, some good nuggets in there. So I had, one of my thoughts, and something that I would ask the commission to think about and put as a topic for next, in our meeting next week, is how do we utilize the intellectual property generated from this effort? And a couple of things, some things that I hadn't thought of last year, but some of this with restructuring could be a presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission, could be a presentation to the Town Council even, could be, so a lot of things that I think we could maybe extract out of here. And this is a question to you, Jennifer, is that having that brief presentation by the student would actually be a more powerful way of getting the message across. Is there, this is no pressure, but is there any appetite for the kids to do this in terms of, I don't know if it's extra assignment but I mean, obviously it's some extra work, and obviously there's a different focus to it because there'd be an ask. In other words, you go saying, we think we should do something more in if I go to the P and Z, in the PLCD in terms of agriculture, we just heard, for example. So that's potentially a lot to ask, but I'll throw it out there to see any reception on your part.
Well, one of the things is this time of year, as you can probably all imagine, is extremely busy for the students. But I think there might be a way that if maybe you made this an open meeting and invited, there might be a way that it's the same presentation, but just maybe the directions that they are given to present are a little bit different. That might be one way to do it, but it is, and I'm totally interested in ways that we could help leverage what they have done to help your community more, absolutely. But I think it would require a little bit of thought. And of course, I can come to another meeting and Michelle and I can talk about this more too. But I think as long as it's not going to be an extraordinary extra amount of work at the end of the semester for them, if their public presentation could be at a time that, again, it still has to work for the students, but you could invite other people as well. I think that could be definitely feasible. That was a really long-winded answer, but I hope I answered you.
I'd like to, again, this is thought just off the top of my head, but I would be thinking more of next fall. We wouldn't try to do it now because we'd have to figure out who to present to, what we wanted to present. And it would definitely not be exactly the same presentation. We'd want to, we definitely want to massage it for the audience, right?
Correct.
Is that what you're thinking, Larry?
Yes, correct. And you're right, it doesn't have to be, that's what I'm saying, is that these are what, sophomores, basically?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, so that in the fall or something, it one could do it, doesn't have to be, this semester, for example.
And it can't be, yeah. But we have to figure out the best way to leverage this. So that's not going to happen overnight.
Correct. Yep.
But remember, the challenge is though, is that then they're not in the class.
Right.
And statistically about like a little over half of our juniors study away. So you may not have all the same members available and present in the fall, but again, that could be worked around.
Okay.
I just want to throw in that if any of these students are particularly passionate about any of these projects, like they could go big league, they could wow, in front of the town council. And we've had input from Kimberly Drelick, who wrote a really good article on the Earth Day Expo, that she's looking for some follow-up articles. So if they wanted to do a one-on-one with like a newspaper reporter, who would vet some of their work, there's an opportunity for them to vault with this a little bit if they're interested, kind of unofficially, not for credit, just kind of on their own initiative. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
possibility or not.
Yeah, it is tough. They have like 8 days left and like 7 of those days are final exams this time of the semester. So that's tough. But like, as you know, you can tell like these are amazing students. They're souls that are doing this because they're passionate about it. So I think if we could brainstorm a way together to like think of in advance how to harness that and to have the opportunity ready to offer to them, I think then it becomes easier than like me just trying to, as they're scattering for the summer, being like, hey, but I would also say like project contacts, feel free to reach out to them and offer them these opportunities. And like the worst that they can say is no. Like I want them to keep running with this, but I also know that they have a lot of them wear, as you can imagine, a lot of different hats. We have a lot of double majors and sports people and all that. But yeah, and I'm too just still taking in how the improvement in project quality. I think, Michelle and I worked a lot over the summer to kind of in the fall to kind of tweak our how we did it. And just working with you guys has been a really positive experience, I know, for myself and also for them.
All right, well, you set the bar.
Oh,
I have a quick idea. How about a second semester? This is a 1-semester course. Make it give another tack on another semester, section 2.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
not gonna
gosh.
happen.
If I mapped out to you what they do extra for the summer we're an add-on program. Goodwineering is not their major. It's a competitive academic program. They're already doing 2 seminars this semester. One is this seminar, but the other is with the juniors, sophomores, and seniors. They're also doing extra coursework and they do a senior project. So I don't think I can add another semester or something. However, I think this like Hannah Guay, who helped plan last year, like showed up at Earth Day this year just to like, to come and do that. So I think there is an opportunity for some peer-to-peer mentoring. And the longer that this partnership continues, the more I think we could kind of seed in more of the continuity of working with you guys, I think. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And again, I'm happy to come to one of your meetings, like, over the summer or whatever point. And of course, Michelle and I always get together and brainstorm. You can't stop the 2 of us from scheming.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm gonna let you go only because I ordered food for them and we're gonna have a little party. I wish we had transportation because I would be like, you guys should come here or we should go there. So maybe that's what we should do next year is plan to be together to celebrate. Maybe you guys could come here or who knows.
Thanks,
you.
Jen. We'll catch up later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Well, that was actually refreshing.
Yeah, and that was nice. There were no run-ons. They all kept to a nice time frame. So I thought that was really good.
No, but that's, yes.
I missed it last year, the presentations.
These were better.
These were better. I won't argue that.
Yes.
It was interesting comment about the going over to there, because we can have our meeting someplace else. I mean, there's nothing that prevents us, I think.
We can't record it.
That's the only problem is recording it. But
Well,
must be
it's not mandatory to record it. Isn't it mandatory to have minutes?
yeah,
10 minutes.
that's the only thing that's
Yeah,
mandatory.
so
And they don't have to say much anything, truthfully. They can, some of our minutes are very short.
I
Particularly
mean, you
this
could
one.
just summarize the
Yeah,
topics
these
again.
yeah, that's all I'm
yeah.
doing. Yeah, that's what I
mean,
did
this
last
would
year.
be-
Slideshows not just be posted up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the minutes of what we saw at the meetings.
No, that's not. No, we can't do, that's the
Well-
format for, it doesn't work like that. It
Yeah,
has to
yeah.
be in Word.
Well, I mean, like we did
Well,
last year.
Yes and no. I mean, there's things you can do, because I mean, the agenda for the town council meeting and stuff have all these 100
Addendums.
pages of attachments. And
Yeah.
stuff.
Right, yeah,
Just the slide deck.
even though these were better, I still wouldn't make them full public. I think we need to do the summaries again. However, there are some of those places, I think some of the things they've produced, we want to have more connections to the other information, not just a summary. So we have to talk about how that's going to work.
Yeah, and that's
That's
one of
fair.
the things I want to talk about next week that says we went fairly simplistically, although it took us a while, and all we did is we published them on, our website. It seems like there's more meat here that we should still do that.
Right.
But what other ways can we use pieces, components, shorten presentation? I mean, there's, the good suggestion about, meeting with Kimberly, even if we did that, I mean, the sponsor did that with their data. Sometimes you don't necessarily need the student, but we could talk about the students and that could be part of the story, which makes it a lot more interesting, right?
Michelle, they should all have their, a lot of the project, the cover slide says by, Caitlin, and so they should put their last names. Yeah.
I know,
Contact
yeah.
information,
Yeah,
yeah.
for posterity, yeah.
Well, yeah, we need to talk about exactly what we're going to publish and how, because last year I didn't even include the names of the students.
Yeah.
In the thing we put online, so.
That's my concern is I wouldn't put their full names
No.
online. I
No.
mean, we should have it and contact
Right.
information.
So
And if
that's
we offer
something for everybody to think about for next week. We can maybe spend a little bit of time on this, deciding exactly how we want to capture this information.
Yep. All right, so that's the homework.
Yeah, and I would say it's great to do press, but make sure that we have buy-in by the students first.
No, absolutely. That's
I
right.
think they're more direct, like, hey, you can really talk to them. They did this.
Well,
project.
No, once they're okay with that,
Yeah,
if they're
yeah.
okay talking with them,
Yeah,
yeah, we can't assume that they're good to go.
That's why I don't want to put their names
Right.
out there.
Yep.
I mean, they're still kids.
Yeah.
Right? Even though technically, I guess a lot of them are adults. but-
Well, they are adults, and I think we need to, we need to differentiate. These aren't middle school and high schoolers, these are,
Right.
college students, and I think we need to address them like that,
Yeah.
and not call them kids, call them, whatever, young adults, whatever,
Students.
college students, however you want to do it, just not kids, so.
Right.
Okay.
This whole presentation is all recorded. It's going to get posted, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be
Yeah.
available to the
Whole
public.
meetings.
Yeah.
So it's available, yes.
Yeah. And that's and also all of our minutes, when the minutes are done,
There's
the
a link.
YouTube link is right there. For
Yeah.
it. So that's, I don't think we need to duplicate that. Yeah.
Yeah, no. What I'm just saying is that it's a little different when, as Michelle did last time, we kind of condensed it.
Yeah.
And made some summaries of it. So it's just.
The summaries are good. I think
Yeah,
that,
how do we, what do we do next with the data we just did? And what do we do next year? And I think we're starting to grow, I guess, that says, is there some continuity?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's definitely, for a couple of them, definitely a follow-on obvious thing to offer for next year. So that's the other thing I want to capture next week is the ideas like having, a little kid stewardship thing, like some, so we need to capture those ideas for next year's projects.
All right, very good.
Move to adjourn.
We have a move to adjourn.
I seconded.
Oh, you beat Michelle. We have a
It's
second.
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
See you
End of
guys next
recording.
week. Thanks.
bye, Michelle.
Next week. Bye-bye.